the uncaged beast. For many years, the galaxy feared only one thing: the Thraggari. They were huge, strong, and wild. Covered in dark scales, eyes glowing like fire, they looked like monsters from nightmares. No one had ever caught one. No one had ever tamed one. They lived only to fight and destroy. Every time they appeared, they left nothing behind. Only ashes and screams. The Thraggari had no leaders, no cities, and no language that others could understand. But they understood violence. Every species across the stars agreed on one thing: if a Thraggari landed on your planet, you ran. Even the mighty Xelar Empire, with its robot armies and sky fortresses, failed to control the beasts. They tried weapons, cages, mind control. All failed. The beasts killed their trainers, destroyed their labs, and vanished into space again. So when the galaxy heard the news, a human colony was attacked by a Thraggari, panic spread. Everyone thought the colony would be wiped out in hours. The people of that colony were mostly scientists and farmers. No army, no weapons, nothing to protect them. But Earth did something strange. They didn't send warships or destroyers. They sent one man. His name was Commander Rylin. Rylin was not a soldier in armor. He wore simple clothes and carried only a small pack. Other species laughed. One human against a Thraggari? That's madness, they said. But Earth stayed silent. When Rylin arrived, the colony was already empty. People had run into bunkers or deep into the forest. No one dared face the beast. Only Rylin walked toward the center of the destruction. There, standing tall like a tower of muscle and rage, was the Thraggari. Her body was stained with dust and blood. Her claws were sharp. She was breathing hard, as if waiting for the next fight. And then she saw him. Rylin did not run. He did not raise a weapon. He just looked at her and said softly, "You're not alone." The Thraggari blinked. For a second, she seemed confused. Her head tilted just slightly. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Usually they screamed or shot at her, but this human did neither. "You're hurt," Rylin said, taking one slow step forward. The colony watched from hidden cameras. Everyone held their breath. They expected to see him ripped apart in seconds, but something strange happened. The beast growled low and deep, but she didn't attack. Her claws scraped the ground, but she stayed still. Rylin sat down on the ground. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I'm here to understand." The Thraggari stepped closer. Dust rose with every step. Her breathing was heavy. Her eyes glowed like two suns. But still, she didn't strike. She stared at him, as if trying to read his soul. Then Rylin did something no one expected. He smiled. "You're not a monster," he said. "You're just tired of running, tired of being feared." The beast made a strange sound, half growl, half something else. No one could tell what it meant. But she didn't kill him. She didn't even roar. She just stood there, watching. From that day, the galaxy started whispering a new name, Vara. That was the name Rylin gave her. Not beast, not monster, just a name. And Vara did something no Thraggari had ever done. She followed the human. Aliens across the stars couldn't believe it. They watched the footage again and again. "This is impossible," they said. "She must be sick, broken, or drugged." But she wasn't. The beast had chosen to follow a human, and that was the moment everything began to change, because Rylin didn't see a wild animal. He saw a soul that no one else dared to see, and Vera, the most feared being in the galaxy, had finally found someone who didn't see her as a monster. He saw her as possible. As the sun set over the broken colony, one human and one Thraggari walked together into the unknown, and the galaxy watched in silence. He didn't run. He spoke across the galaxy. People watched in disbelief. A human had survived a face-to-face meeting with a Thraggari. Not just survived, he had spoken to it. And the beast had listened. No one knew what to make of it. Was the human insane? Or was something even more unbelievable happening? Commander. Rylin didn't act like any other soldier or explorer. He didn't wear armor, he didn't carry weapons, and he didn't raise his voice. Where others used fear, he used calm. Where others shouted commands, he spoke gently. He didn't believe in taming with chains. He believed in taming with choice. Every day Rylin would rise early and sit near the edge of the ruined colony, close to the forest where Vera now lived. He brought her food, not to trap her, but to offer peace. Raw meat, fresh water, and sometimes warm stew cooked by human hands. At first, Vara didn't touch it. She watched from the trees, silent and still. But slowly, she began to move closer. One step, then two, then one day, she ate. And Rylin simply nodded and said, "Thank you for trusting me." She didn't answer, but she didn't run away either. Most people thought Rylin was foolish. A beast like Vara couldn't understand kindness. But Rylin believed differently. He remembered the look in her eyes, not of rage but of pain. He had seen the same look in wounded soldiers, lost orphans, and even wild animals on Earth. It wasn't hate. It was fear and loneliness. So, every day, he spoke to her, not with orders, but with stories. He told her about Earth, the green forests, the blue oceans, the children laughing in the rain. He spoke of music, of dreams, of space exploration. He told her how humans used to fear wolves too. But one day, one human threw meat to a wolf instead of a stone, and that wolf became the first dog. "Maybe you're not a wolf," Rylin said, one day. "But I'm still willing to try." Vera stood just a few feet away, listening. She tilted her head again. Her sharp claws rested by her side. Her breathing was slower now. And her eyes, those glowing eyes, seemed less like fire and more like light. The real test came when a rescue ship landed nearby. The crew came with orders to kill the Thraggari and bring Rylin home. They were afraid he'd been brainwashed or tricked. They pointed guns at Vara. They demanded Rylin step away, but Rylin stood in front of her. "If you shoot," he said, "you'll hit me first." The soldiers froze. No one moved. Vara stood behind him, tense but silent. She could have killed them all, but she didn't. She waited for him to decide. "She's not the threat," Rylin said firmly. "Your fear is." For the first time in history, a Thraggari beast was spared because of a human's words, not weapons. The ship left, and Rylin stayed. That night, something unexpected happened. As Rylin sat by the fire, Vara approached him without sound. She sat beside him. Close. Not behind, not across the fire, but beside him. As if she had made a decision. She looked at the stars and let out a long, low breath. Rylin smiled and said softly, "You don't have to speak. I already hear you." And even though Vara didn't understand every word, something in her heart shifted. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not as a weapon, not as a killer, but as something more. The galaxy had always feared the Thraggari, because no one had tried to understand them, but Rylin had. And now, one Thraggari had begun to understand him too. It was not the start of control, it was the start of connection. The bond begins. No one believed it until they saw it with their own eyes. A Thraggari, one of the galaxy's deadliest beasts, was walking beside a human without a chain, a weapon, or fear. But what shocked them even more was the look in her eyes. Not rage, not hunger, but curiosity. Vera followed Commander Rylin, now, not because she was forced to, but because she chose to. And every step she took beside him was rewriting history. Rylin didn't treat her like a beast. He never gave orders. He invited. He explained. He gave her a name when everyone else had called her a monster. And slowly that name gave her something she never had before. Identity. In the early mornings, Vara would wait near the tree line while Rylin prepared food. She watched how he moved, how he spoke to birds, how he touched the ground with care. She mimicked him without realizing it, learning by watching, not from commands. One day, Rylin reached out his hand with a piece of bread. Vera leaned in, sniffed it, then took it gently, without growling, without biting. Her claws didn't even touch his skin. That simple act was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions watched. Some were amazed. Others were afraid. What if she's pretending, they asked. What if this is a trap? But the footage didn't lie. Day by day, the monster was learning to trust. Rylin spoke to her constantly. Simple words, gestures, symbols. He pointed to things and named them: sky, tree, stone, Rylin, Vara. She began to repeat the sounds, rough and slow but clear. She even began to understand emotions. When Rylin laughed, she tilted her head and made a strange chirping sound, a sound no one had ever heard from a Thraggari before. And when he was injured during a fall, she panicked. She ran to him, lowered her head, and let out a soft growl, protective and nervous. Rylin looked up at her and whispered, "You care." And she did. When other colonists finally returned, they stayed far from the edge where Vara lived. Mothers held their children tightly. Guards stood with trembling hands. But Vara did nothing. She stayed near Rylin, watching peacefully, and he stood beside her like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then came the moment that changed everything. A wild animal from the forest, small but fast, charged toward a child who had wandered too far from the others. The guards hesitated, too slow to react, but Vera didn't. She moved like lightning. One roar, one leap, and she was between the creature and the child. Her claws swept through the air. The beast was gone in seconds, and the child stood frozen, in shock, staring up at the towering figure above her. Vera didn't snarl. She didn't roar again. She turned, gently pushed the child toward the humans, and walked back to the forest edge. No one said a word, not even the guards. Rylin looked around and said, "Now, do you believe me?" That moment went viral, not just on Earth, but across the galaxies. News headlines read, "Thraggari saves human child." Debates exploded. Is this proof of intelligence? Of emotion? Can we trust them? Or is this just one exception? But Rylin didn't care about debates. He cared about her. One evening, he brought out a small device that played music, soft, gentle earth melodies. Vera sat still, listening, her eyes closed. And then, slowly, she swayed, just a little, almost like dancing. Rylin laughed softly. You feel it, don't you? In that moment, they weren't a beast and a man. They were two beings from different worlds, sharing the same moment, the same sound. The galaxy didn't know what to call this new bond. But Rylin knew the word, friendship, and Vera was beginning to understand it too. The test of fire, they said it was impossible. They said it was dangerous. But what truly scared the Galactic Council was not that Vera was still alive, it was that she had changed, that a human had reached her heart when Empire's weapons and science had all failed. Now the Council wanted proof. Not just stories, not just videos. They wanted a test. A harsh, final test. If Vera was truly tame, then she would protect, not attack when put under pressure. If she was truly more than a beast, she would choose mercy. So they sent both Rylin and Vara to a death world called Zarnok 7, a planet covered in violent storms, lava pits, and deadly creatures. The mission was simple. Survive together for 7 days, no weapons, no allies, no rescue. For most species, this would be a death sentence. But for Rylin and Vara, it became something else. The drop pod crashed into the mud with smoke rising behind it. Rylin stepped out, bruised but alive. Vara emerged next, her muscles tense, eyes alert. The air was thick and hot. Creatures howled in the distance. The planet was alive and hunting. Rylin looked at her. You don't have to protect me, he said. You're free to go. Vera said nothing. She walked past. Him sniffed the air and circled around. When the first shadow leaped from the trees, it wasn't Rylin who moved first, it was her. She struck with blinding speed, pinning the creature with one claw and slamming it into a stone. Blood splashed, and silence followed. Rylin stood still. Vara turned, looked him in the eye, and nodded. She had chosen to stay. Each night they built shelter under broken trees and thick rock walls. Vara gathered stones. Rylin gathered food. One day he slipped near a lava crack and burned his leg. Vara roared, not at him, but at the world. She carried him back to the camp, her arms strong but gentle. She used cool mud to cover his wound. It was the first time she had healed someone. That night, as rain poured over them, Rylin looked at her and whispered, "You're more human than most I know." For a moment, he thought she didn't understand. But then, slowly, she reached over and touched his injured leg very softly and let out a low hum. It was not a growl, it was comfort. By the fourth day, creatures began to avoid them. The wild things of Zarnok 7 had learned. This pair was not prey, but the true test came on the sixth night. Another drop pod landed, not to rescue, but to trap. A team of council agents appeared, armed with stun rifles. They had orders: capture Vara, dead or alive. The test had never been fair. They wanted proof that she was still a beast. As the agents surrounded them, Rylin stood in front of Vara, arms raised. "She hasn't harmed anyone. What more do you want?" The leader gave the order. A shot rang out. It didn't hit Rylin. It didn't hit Vara. It hit a creature rushing from the trees, one of Zarnok's predators drawn by the noise. Vara didn't hesitate. She leapt into action, taking down two more, predators that followed, her claws flashing like lightning. But she never touched the agents. Even when they fired again, she did not attack them. She shielded Rylin. She held back her strength. She chose restraint. That moment changed everything. The agents lowered their weapons. One whispered, "She's not a beast." They returned to the ship in silence. No chains, no cages, just a man and a Thraggari, walking side by side. And in that silence, the galaxy began to understand something new. Control is not power. Trust is. The war they didn't expect, it began with a tremor. Small, distant, easy to ignore. But then came the second, and the third. By the time the fourth shook the ground, every sensor on the peaceful planet of Oriana sounded alarms. The skies turned dark. The birds vanished. And then the roars came, deep, thunderous, ancient. The Thraggari horde had arrived. Not one, not 10, hundreds. These were not like Vara. These were still wild, untouched, unspoken to, and full of rage. They tore through forests, crushed buildings, and destroyed anything that moved. They did not stop. They did not speak. They only conquered. The Galactic Council was too slow to react. The local defense failed in minutes. Evacuation orders were screamed across every channel. But one message changed everything. Rylin sent out a transmission. "Do not fire. I repeat, hold fire. We're sending someone who might understand them." That someone was Vara. The idea was madness. One Thraggari against hundreds? But Rylin believed in her, and more than that, he believed they might listen to her, the way she once listened to him. Vara stood at the edge of a burning ridge. Behind her, terrified humans and aliens hid in shelters. In front of her, a wall of monstrous bodies approached, claws ready, jaws open. But she did not growl. She did not run. She stepped forward and roared, not a war cry, a command. The horde paused. It was only a second, but in battle, a second can split fate. She stepped forward again and beat her chest once. The lead Thraggari snarled in confusion. He rushed at her thinking she was weak. That was his mistake. Vara met him midair and slammed him into the ground so hard the earth cracked. She didn't kill him. She pinned him. Her roar now was deeper, older, one that echoed through every beast's blood. It was not human. It was Thraggari. And it said, "Enough." The other beasts stopped. They growled, unsure, circling her. Vara stood tall, breathing heavy. She looked back only once to Rylin. He said nothing, he only nodded. Then she turned to the horde and spoke her first full sentence in a human tongue. "These are my people too." Silence fell across the battlefield. Some of the Thraggari stepped back, some lowered their heads. The tide was turning, not with firepower, but with presence. The council ships above watched in awe. Everyone expected blood. Instead, they saw leadership. Vara walked through the beasts, slowly, firmly. None touched her. One even bowed. She stopped at the front of the ruined city and raised both arms. Behind her, the horde stood still. The war was over. No one had fired a shot. Later, a council historian would say, "She didn't defeat them with strength. She gave them a reason to stop fighting." It was a moment that would be remembered forever, not as a victory of weapons, but as the day a Thraggari chose peace, because one human had chosen her first. The galaxy reacts. The galaxy did not sleep that night. Across 1,000 systems, every news screen, hologram, and broadcast repeated one image. Vara, standing tall among a sea of silenced beasts, with a human by her side. There were no chains, no orders, no battle cries. Just a bond the galaxy had never understood before. It wasn't victory that shocked them. It was the way it happened. No species in galactic history had ever turned a Thraggari away from war. And yet one had done it, not with control, but with trust. Not with fear, but with friendship. And the most shocking part, that species was human. Debates exploded across the stars. Some leaders praised the moment as the beginning of a new era. Others called it dangerous. What if the humans are using the Thraggari? What if they've bred a smarter weapon? What if this is only the beginning of something worse? But deep down, everyone knew this wasn't a weapon. This was something far more powerful. This was influence. On Earth, Vara's name trended for weeks. Children drew pictures of her. Poets wrote about her. Scientists studied her biology. And for the first time ever, alien diplomats requested to visit a Thraggari peacefully. One by one, more humans reached out to other lone Thraggari across space. Most were met with claws and roars, but some paused. Some watched. Some listened. The old fear wasn't gone, but a new feeling was growing in its place. Hope. The Galactic Council, still shaken, demanded answers. They called Rylin and Vara to testify before them. A huge chamber was prepared. Every known species sent a representative. When the pair walked in, all noise stopped. Some gasped at the sight of Vara in simple clothes, not armor, not chains, just cloth stitched by human hands. Others stared at her eyes, calm, sharp, aware. The council began asking questions. How did you do it? Why didn't she kill you? Is this human manipulation? Rylin answered calmly. We didn't break her. We listened to her. But it was Vara who silenced the room. She stood up slowly, her voice deep and rough but clear. You call me monster. You called me weapon. You never asked what I wanted. A long pause. Then she added, He did. The chamber froze. No one interrupted her. Vara looked around, her gaze hard and honest. Humans are strange. They fear, but still reach out. They fight, but also heal. They look at creatures like me and don't always run. Sometimes they offer food. A few laughed nervously. She continued, You ask why I followed him. Not because he was strong, because he saw me. And the others? One alien asked. Why do they listen to you now? Vara's answer was simple. Because I remembered what it felt like to be alone, and I chose not to leave them that way. That single sentence broke through species, borders, and history. The council fell silent. Outside the chamber, millions watched the speech unfold, and for the first time, The galaxy didn't see Vara as a beast. They saw her as a bridge, not between human and Thraggari, but between what the galaxy had always believed and what it might become. Something had changed forever, and the credit did not go to weapons, fleets, or laws. It went to a human, crazy enough to care. The human way Vara stood on the balcony of her new home, overlooking the hills of Earth. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft orange and pink, so different from the harsh red suns of her past. Behind her, inside, the house. Laughter echoed. Human laughter. A child's voice. Rylin's calm tone. The quiet hum of peace. Peace. It was a word she had never truly known until she met a human who refused to fear her. Now, everything was different. Vara was no longer hunted, no longer a mystery or a monster. She was a guest, a protector, a friend. Since the day she stood before the Galactic Council, everything had begun to shift. Some aliens still feared her, others still whispered, but more and more began to follow. Earth's led, not by building cages but by opening doors, not by forcing obedience but by offering understanding. Some Thraggari still roamed wild. Many were not ready, but a few had followed Vara's path. They arrived at human colonies, not with claws but with curiosity, and there they found something they had never received before. Patience. The humans didn't try to dominate them. They invited them to learn, and when those beasts learned to sit instead of strike, to listen instead of roar, the galaxy saw something. It never expected the fiercest species in the stars could be guided, not by chains, but by choice. Rylin and Vara were now symbols, living proof that the impossible was just something no one had tried the right way. At night, messages arrived from all over the galaxy. A Thraggari cub had joined a human school on Mars. A teenage girl had become pen pals with a young Thraggari who had learned to read. One even asked to train as a healer. It was slow, it was messy, but it was real. One evening, as Vara helped an elderly human repair a garden fence, he looked at her with a tired smile and said, "You're not what I expected." She tilted her head. "You're better," he added. "Stronger not just in body, but in heart." She didn't respond with words. She simply nodded. Because she understood now. Strength wasn't just about fighting, it was about choosing not to fight. Later that week, Rylin and Vara walked through a small Earth town. People waved, children ran to her, dogs barked but didn't run, and no one screamed. Vara paused in front of a mirror hanging outside a shop. She looked at her reflection. Her scales were still rough, her eyes still bright, her shape still powerful, but in her posture, in her eyes, there was something new. Peace. Rylin looked at her. "Do you miss the old you?" She thought for a moment, then said softly, "I am still me, but now I'm free." He smiled. "That's the human way." She looked at him. "No," she corrected. "That's our way." The galaxy would write books about their story. Some would say it was bravery, others would call it madness. But in the end, history would remember this truth. Humans were the only species crazy enough to try to tame the untamable, not with force but with heart, and they were the only ones who ever succeeded.